Today's episode is brought to you by Hustler Made to Work. I'm really honored that they've come on to support the podcast because I've actually been using Hustlers for almost 10 years now myself. They're some of the most reliable machines that I've ever used in my business. More about them later in the podcast. All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We have back for the second time Lawn Queen Emma Grantham. How are you going, Emma?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean no offense by this, but I was absolutely shocked when you were in the top 10 of our podcasts, the original one we did. And I don't mean that to be offensive. I just mean if you just follow accounts or you follow whatever metrics you want, you know, there's plenty of people out there with a hell of a lot more Instagram followers and all that sort of stuff, bigger profiles. But it just shows that people must have really loved that episode, because what happens is when people like the episode, the algorithm pushes it to more people. So anyways, congratulations.
I mean, it was either that or I do have a very big family. So they may have just been smashing the views. So
yeah, an extra couple of thousand siblings to smash everybody else out. Tell you what, your parents were busy, weren't they? I was like, I enjoyed the episode, but sometimes the popular episodes, you know, they're not from the people who are, who have those vanity metrics.
Very unexpected. It was very unexpected to even make the cut. I think we had a little combo on Insta where I was like, what?
I think you were ninth as well. I think it was like, I can't remember, it was a while back, but yeah, I think it was ninth, and it was like genuinely, you know, solidly in the top 10. It wasn't even like, oh, you just scraped in 17 views extra than 11th or something like that. But so anyways, so we had a great conversation last time. It must have been the algorithm of Spotify and Apple and YouTube pushing it to people because they liked it.
It wouldn't have been the content. No way.
No, it was. That's why they liked it. But
I'm kidding.
I'm trying to be kind to you. But I want to start off straight away by this. So we're not going to do the same podcast we did last time. We're going to get nerdy in here, and people love that on the podcast. You have been trialing different turf varieties. It's all on film on your YouTube channel. Specifically cooch varieties. So TifTuf, TifTuf, Iron Cutter. There's a couple. Is wintergrass as well? Is there?
Wintergreen, wintergreen.
Wintergreen. Sorry, yeah. Wintergrass is when you don't do your pre-immersion application.
You don't want that.
No, exactly. So, but you've got different cooch varieties. I'll let you take it away in a second. But basically, you've been trialing them out as an independent reviewer. And I don't know if we've really had that before. And I'm really interested and curious to see exactly what you found on which turf variety is actually best for Australian conditions.
Yeah, so I've been, as you said, I've been lucky enough to sort of be invited out initially to some trial sites. And as anyone who's probably followed along on the YouTube channel that's essentially what I wanted to create in my own property. And I'm slowly getting there, but it's not like proper replicated block trials, obviously. So I was lucky enough to go out to UQ Gatton. Turf Breed have a site out there, at in-field trial. And that's got, as you said, TifTuf, Iron Cutter Elite Hybrid Bermuda, TifTuf Hybrid Bermuda, Wintergreen, and Santa Ana, which is not grown up here, but that's probably the industry standard cooch down south, would you say?
Yeah, it's a legacy one, so a lot of people have it. It's been around for a long time.
Like it's stock standard, time tested. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I've seen it out there. Recently travelled down to another trial site down in Victoria, and that was really, really interesting for me to see different climates as well. And then obviously I've got my own plots at home to compare it to, and I'm seeing a lot of consistencies across the board, but it's for my own benefit. It's been really good to sort of see behind the claims that are sort of made when you read about a turf grass or you're choosing one for your own lawn, and you see the shade tolerance ratings, the drought tolerance, and this, that, and the other. And it's been good to actually see firsthand the facts and maybe how those claims come about, or which ones, at the moment I'm sort of like, is that the truth or is that marketing? Not sure. So I've really, really loved doing that. So some of it's just been data collection, and that's how the UQ Gatton trial sort of started off at. So that was a bit of a collaboration with also ICL as nutrition regimes. And that's been interesting to sort of test the claims of lower input requirements of some of the hybrids to the scene. And then working with Dr. Brett Morris from Syngenta. And we're looking at Primo Max 2 plant growth regulator as well, and the impact that has on the hybrids. So that trial lasted quite a few months, and obviously in the growing season, last growing season, and that was really interesting also.
So I've seen the videos of you making the plots. So you got multiple ones in different areas now, I think, as well. But the video that I saw, if I'm correct, is you essentially have the same soil. You've separated them out. You have them right next to each other. You tell me what you've done, because it is quite scientific, as much as you could do with a single person on your own property.
Yeah, so the trial sites are not mine. At home, I've got the ones here that are mine, but the trial sites that I'm working on, as I said, is sort of like I'm the independent
right, awesome
data collector, and also setting them up. But absolutely, they're all the same soil. I took soil samples so that it's all treated the same. They're then laid out in a complete randomized block trial layout. And so far I've only just actually planted a buffalo trial. And I'm not a big fan of buffalo, but I'm actually interested to see that one. And so what comes of that, I'm probably more a zoysia and cooch fan, and that's probably what I typically specify to people when they ask me about turf. But it'll be good to get some more experience though with the buffalo. But there's also a cooch trial and a zoysia trial that I've sort of been involved with starting up, like planting it. And it's very much, everything's going to be weighed out. You've got to treat it all the same, otherwise there's going to be bias, and that's how people are going to say that things aren't fair and that there's claims that might be dubious or things like that. And I think that's why I think it's important for me to be independent. And I think some of the companies that I work with also value that, because you can only claim so much that a product that you have is the best product or that it does this. But if someone else can actually substantiate that claim in an independent manner, then that's ultimately the biggest test, and then show you, hey, this is the methodology, this is how this came about, then those claims are realistic and hard to dispute.
So what is the biggest thing you've learnt so far? Or maybe I should reword that as, what is the most surprising thing you've learnt so far testing out these cooch grasses?
What's the most surprising thing? Probably what surprised me the most is the impact of nitrogen. While there's turf varieties out there that can get by with so little nitrogen, pretty much in all of the research that I've been involved with anyways, is the ones that perform the best are the ones that are fed the most. And I see that they only sort of seem to go a little bit sideways is if you're not actually grooming the turf, especially when we're talking about the cooch varieties. That's probably the most surprising thing. I don't think anything's been super, super surprising. I think the only thing that really stands out to me is I'm quite often asked all the time in private messages and stuff of which one's the best. Thanks for the nice video and saying all these things, but it's like people think I'm holding out on them. They're like, but seriously, which one's the best?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that probably surprises me, my own answer to that. If you told me, if I thought about it, I don't know, 2 years ago, I would have thought for sure I'd have a favorite. And I don't, because while they're so similar, the turf varieties, and the big three in particular, while they're really similar, they all have their own characteristics and their own traits. And so I feel really, really strongly about it now. It all depends on your environment, and all depends on what your requirements are and what your needs are. Because even in my own property we're on less than 2 acres here, and I've already been looking at what landscaping we're doing. We're currently renovating inside, and the turf variety that I choose out in our back paddock is going to be different to the one that I choose in the backyard, which is going to be different to the one that I choose to cut really low. And I'll probably end up using all 3 of them, but it would be based on my needs and what I'm after. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me that's come out of it, is now I know how they behave, the 3 big turf varieties in Tahoma 31, TifTuf and Iron Cutter. And I see them all as being quite different, and so therefore they're better suited to certain scenarios.
So what is the difference, or what are the major differences between them? Because a lot of us would just go, well, they're all couch grass, and maybe it's just all marketing and all hype, and is there really that much of a difference? It sounds like you're saying there really is in certain key areas. So if you were to summarise, yes, TifTuf is like this, and Tahoma is like this, and Iron Cutter is like this, how would you put it?
So first, they are totally different to the likes of, up here we have wintergreen as the standard, and you would honestly, if I took you out to some of these trial sites, you would be able to pick out the wintergreen plots.
So because they're not as good, or what are you seeing that you pick it out from a distance?
The turf quality is not as good. There's seed head everywhere. It's the way that it looks. It's mostly turf quality, but it's color as well. And they just look quite sparse, and that's across the board. And so what you pay for, and I get it, budget is a huge thing, especially in this cost of living crisis that we're in right now, and people find it hard to justify paying more than $5 a square meter for couch. But what you pay for up front initially, you will recover over time in terms of you don't use as much water. That's proven. That's a fact. That's already been proven with TifTuf having the Smart Approved watermark. So there's proof of that. They use less nutrition, so pretty much all 3 of them outperformed wintergreen on about half the amount of nitrogen, half the amount of fertilizer. So they look better.
So they look better with half the fertilizer, as in the wintergreen was getting twice as much product, and the other ones were getting half. And they still look better.
Yeah, I think by the end of the trial, I think it was Iron Cutter that was on, I think the 1.5 kilo per 100 square meter per year of elemental nitrogen. I think that was outperforming in terms of color and quality the 3 kilo wintergreen plots consistently. So that's where those sorts of claims come from, and that was pretty similar to the other varieties as well. So, but in terms of what's different about them, Tahoma 31 doesn't grow very quickly vertically. So quite often when we were looking at height prism readings, it had hardly grown. You were hardly taking anything off the top. If you want to push Tahoma 31, you've really got to be feeding it if you want it to grow. So people can see that as a huge pro, and that's why I would probably put it out my back paddock, because I don't want to mow very often out there. So if you want a low maintenance hybrid that's going to do all these things, then because you're after low mowing requirement, but you still want it to look good, that's when I'd probably say Tahoma 31. I'd say the con associated that I have with it is it does lose a bit of colour in autumn and winter. And I would say that that's far more dramatic down south. In Queensland, you can sort of get away with it. But I know that might be enough to be a deal breaker for some people if, they're paying that amount for a grass that doesn't necessarily look super green for more than 6 to 9 months of the year.
If you've been thinking about getting to ride-on mowing this season, or you want to upgrade the ride-on mower you currently have a look at the Hustler range. Like I said before, I've been using them for almost 10 years now, and I can honestly say they are some of the most versatile and reliable machines I have ever used. One of the things about Hustlers is you can use them on overgrown jobs, and I did a lot of those in the early days, but take that same mower and put it on a highly manicured lawn and it still does a really good job. Hustlers have a great range all the way from the 34-inch dash to the Super 104, which is a 104-inch wide mower. Add to that the Raptor range, Fast Track, X1, Super Z, Super S, and the Hustler likely have a mower that suits your budget and your goals. In addition, Hustler have 130 plus dealers across the country, which means heaven forbid, if something were to go wrong, the help is not far away. And that is crucial if you're relying on that machine for your income. I'm really honored that Hustler have come on board to support the podcast because it's a brand I truly believe in. If you want to get into ride-on mowing this season, like I said, check out the range. Thank you, Hustler, for support. Hustler, here to work. Well, when I was in Sydney and we did the live event there, they had just put T31 on the Matilda's training pitch at BISP, and it was very white. And they had sprayed it with a pigment, but on the edges, they hadn't sprayed because they didn't want to drift onto the paths and things like that. And you could see that. But the thing that's not very fair about that is it had only been down for like 9 months or something, or maybe even less. It wasn't very old, and so you would kind of expect that next year it would be better. And it was. Yeah. This is the middle of winter as well, so it is. It was literally mid-July that we were there. I think the 18th or something like that. So the worst time of year for it. But I did look at it and I was like, yeah, it's. I can't make a judgment call, but I felt that was quite white, and so it's interesting that you're saying the same thing there.
Yeah, there's a definite loss of colour. It's, one of my ambassadors that I work with, his name's Tyson, TJ's Turf on Instagram, and he has, I would consider it to be like the top T31 lawn in Australia, and he's in Sydney, and he gets remarkable colour out of his. I know that he's always spending time on it, and like I said, if you want the most out of it, you sort of got to really feed it. I think it's a really interesting turf type though, because it sort of takes so quickly. And I remember when I put mine in, it was a good 3 days old, and it probably shouldn't have survived. It was cooking on the back of a ute tray. It went in, and a week later it's green as anything. And I think we've seen so many examples of that across social media in the last 12 or so months, and that is enough that really excited people, and they're like, what is this new grass? Yeah. My only, I guess, word of warning would be I've now seen that can sort of lure people into this false sense of security of, I'm going to go hard with a reno, I'm going to treat it like this, I'm going to do that. Just remember it's still in its infancy stages, really. And I agree with you. I think you need to sort of give it a good year to really properly establish, because a lot of the plugs that I take on some of these trial sites, the roots it's not as an aggressive grower in the root zone either. So its roots are really fine and narrow and probably cover a lot of surface area, which probably speaks to how it establishes so quickly in terms of taking. So you can mow straight after you basically plant it. It's pretty much taken within a week or so. But in terms of actual root development, yeah, I would sort of challenge people to take a plug or dig a hole and see how deep are the roots actually going, because I think that you need to sort of get it to really establish and get those nice, healthy, deep roots before you start going crazy with spring renovations and things. But yeah, I find
it sounds like. Sorry. It sounds like what you're saying is essentially it's like if you use a car as an analogy, it's really fast to get to 100, and then 100 plus it just struggles, whereas another car might be slower to get to 100 but then can keep going and keep pushing through. So it's kind of like that first initial thing, it'll send its roots out really quickly, but then over the long term, is it actually growing faster than the others? Maybe not.
Yeah. So it's got a high volume of roots, but from what I've seen anyways, it's quite shallow to begin with. And I have seen some root tube trials and TifTuf and Iron Cutter had much deeper roots. I think it would be hard to say too much about the water use, but I would say that might impact the water use of Tahoma as well, because it might not have root system as deep in as shorter time frame. But certainly the colour, Tahoma 31 greens up really, really well at the start of spring. I'm looking at a plot of it right now out the front, and it's probably the greenest now, and 2 weeks ago it was quite brown.
Right.
However, for the most part of the year, it will be outperformed in terms of colour by TifTuf and Iron Cutter.
Right. And but they in winter are outperforming wintergreen. Is that what you're saying?
They're all outperforming wintergreen.
So wintergreen, right? Wintergreen is rubbish on the colour. It's the one that's the worst in every way. And then, so if you've had wintergreen in the past, so what I'm getting at is here is, let's say you've had wintergreen in the past, and the colour in winter has been average. You're probably going to get slightly better with Tahoma, right? You're probably going to get a little bit better colour. But if you really your number one goal was winter colour, you'd be going for an Iron Cutter or a TifTuf.
Yeah, exactly. So, which brings me back to it depends on your needs. And, you know, I had one customer last week, he's really keen on cutting very, very low, but he wants colour all year round. And I straight away in my mind, I would probably suggest TifTuf, because it's quite stoloniferous. It fills in very quickly. The leaf blades on TifTuf are super, super fine. So I think it's better suited to that really low cut height. And so in that instance, I would say, okay, go this. And then if another customer said, hey, I love spending my time out mowing. I do want to be, mowing once or twice a week. I want to, between 15, 20 mil, which one's the right one for me? I'd go, it's probably worth looking at Iron Cutter. So they're all slightly different. It just depends on what you're after. But
so tell me about... Sorry, I thought you'd stop there. But tell me about what your thoughts are on the root growth of Iron Cutter, because their advertising is very much look at these roots. You can see the actual pictures that they actually put on your Facebook ads and stuff. There's got a guy holding some roots, and they're trying to, there's another shot where they're comparing the root growth, and so they're really, really going on about that. Has that been your experience when you've been testing it?
I'm actually really glad that you've asked me that, because I haven't really put it on my socials much, but I was actually involved in some of that. So right. I got to see those tubes. I got to cut them up. But yeah, I'd prefer to just remain quite independent. However, that's legitimate. I've got footage of the same event filmed later on.
Yep.
And yeah, to be clear, they're 1 meter PVC tubes, and they're full sand base.
Right.
And so the roots were down the bottom. They were down the bottom for TifTuf as well. However, in terms of if I had to make a judgment call and had to say which ones were the most aggressive, had the most aggressive root system, it would have been Iron Cutter. Based on that particular trial, based on that growing median. But yeah, that's legitimate footage and shots that you've seen. I've sort of kept it up my sleeve. I don't know why I haven't really posted it that much. I've just seen, others on social media using it. So I figured, you know what, I'll let them have it. But I have been asked about that, and that's true. That's legitimate. And those photos and the footage is real. And it does go right to the bottom of the PVC tube, and then it starts like winding around.
Yeah.
Sort of looking for water. Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
I've got it's just not turf related, but I've got hanging baskets in here with plants in them, and I have this all on an automatic tap timer, right? I thought the tap timer was pretty new, and so a couple of months old, And so I put all my irrigation, all the plants on a tap timer when I left for the tour. And at some point, the tap timer's just decided it's not going to work automatically anymore. And it wasn't that long, and being winter, wasn't that hot. So I came back, and some of the plants are really struggling, and some of the plants are doing really well. They didn't mind. They're a bit more drought resistant. There's a philodendron up there, right, which is a kind of shrub, and next to it are some vines hanging down, and it's my one thing in that hanging basket that's not hanging down. What happened is it sent a root through the bottom of the hanging basket, and it is about a meter long, hanging out the bottom, just a single philodendron root. It's quite thick. It's probably, I don't know, half the thickness of a pencil to a pencil thick, and it's continuing to grow. So it's like I have a vine that is growing down. There's probably 3.5 meters for it to touch the floor, and I think it's going to touch the floor. And I've been really impressed by how long this. I've got to post a photo on the stories or something like that when this comes out. But so it's actually
my own little trial there.
Yeah, but it's outperforming the vines. It's outgrowing the vines next to it that are supposed to be hanging down. But anyway, so obviously I think something's happened where it's gone, I need more water, so I'm gone looking.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you just reminded me of that. But yeah, it's amazing what some plants will do, especially like if you go to a nursery and they've kept it in the pot for too long and you pull it out, then you're like, holy crap, there's no soil left in this more. This is just completely root. Pot bound, not good for the plant. But some of these plants are very aggressive. So you're kind of getting that with the iron cutter, even after a meter. That's what you're saying?
Yeah. I think a lot of it could potentially be explained. I haven't seen any trials yet, or haven't been part of any really yet. I think a lot of it could be explained by what's happening above the surface is sort of mirroring what's below the surface, because T31, if the root system is a bit shallower than the others, it also doesn't grow as quick vertically. So that sort of makes sense, right? And then iron cutter, I would suggest that it is the most aggressive growing of the three, especially in terms of vertically. Its vertical height, it's a funny grower. It just grows straight up. It's like, it does send runners, but it's quite vertical. It almost reminds me sort of ryegrass, which is really why it lies down really nicely when you stripe it up. But because it's so aggressive and it is growing faster vertically, that then also makes sense that it's sending roots down quite rapidly as well. And then, TifTuf is not far behind from the trials that I've seen in that medium. And what's happening on my plots here is the same, because, I sort of came home from that and thought, am I going to see the same thing at home? So I got the Pro Plugger out and checked it, and it was the same. But this is also on USGA sand, so I'm keen to see it on heavier soil.
So what do you feel with that growth? Is it a purely academic amount of growth, or is it literally you will need to cut one of them more often than the other?
Depends what height you're cutting it. I would say that the answer would be yes, you will need to cut iron cutter more than T31. That would be my answer. It grows faster than TifTuf. Yes. Depends what height though, because if you're as you know, if you're maintaining turf really low, then you've got to increase your mowing frequency. If you're cutting it higher, then you decrease it. So it really depends what height, in terms of, is it going to mean an extra mow? But certainly if I miss a mow out the front on the plots, I think I'm keeping them at about 20 mil currently. If I miss a mow and say I go 3 weeks or something, the iron cutter will punish me, and it'll look scalped, but it then recovers quite quickly as well. But it's certainly something. I had a fly-in, fly-out worker a few weeks ago, came here to have a look at the plots, and I just said, I'm just not sure it's the right one for you in that scenario.
Right, yep.
If you are going to be away for 2 weeks, I don't think it will be quite as forgiving on that type of scenario. Obviously, you can use PGR and things like that. It's a personal preference, but in that case, that's where perhaps they'd be better off leaning to Homer 31. And I think that's why you'll see on the socials even a lot of fly-in, fly-out workers have got Homer 31 because it suits their needs.
Right. So you're right. So we're starting to get this picture of what your understanding is, that if you're chasing deep roots and that kind of style of growth, then the iron kite is good. My next question, and this is one of the things that I keep getting at, there's differences that are purely academic or purely on a spreadsheet, and they don't actually affect your life at all. Like one of the things I've noticed as an example for people, and we'll get back into the turf in a second, is a lot of people will buy, say, battery tools as contractors because one tool has slightly better runtime. For example, it might be, well, I can get 6 jobs done with this one, I can get 7 jobs done with that one, and so I'll get the one that can get 7 jobs. But the reality is if you're doing 10 jobs a day, it makes no difference to your actual life because you both have to switch them at some, you have to put another battery on at some point in the day. It's the difference between not charging it. And so how much you actually have to charge it and how much you have to spend, you both have to buy 2 batteries, you both have to replace it. And so sometimes we get sucked into these statistical differences and be like, oh, it's 10% better. And it's like, oh, 10% is always better. But actually in the real world, it doesn't matter. And so the same thing could happen with cutting. Well, it's like, I'm going to cut my grass once a week. Okay, cool. Iron cutter might grow 10%. I'm making up the number. Maybe it grows 10% faster than TifTuf. But TifTuf grew 15 millimeters that week, right? And then again, all these numbers are made up. And iron cutter grew 16.5 millimeters that week. Like the 10% means nothing. It's just academic. It's just somebody measuring it. And so it goes both ways. The negatives might not be that bad and the positives might not be that bad either, because it might be like, oh, you need 10% less water. Well, I was using 10 millimeters per watering time. Now I'm going to use 9. It's like, does that really? No, it doesn't make it. It's just purely academic. So is this kind of all the ideas that a lot of the differences are purely something you can measure on a spreadsheet, but at the end of the day, if you're mowing the lawn once a week and you're fertilizing it this much, is there that much noticeable difference? Yeah.
And that's for sure what I'm seeing. In some senses, you look at it and you go, you know what? That they're there or thereabouts, that it's not statistically different, and that's what the trials will do too. You'll go through and get your least significant difference, and they're so close that they could actually be the same cultivar, so there's no point making any claims because they don't stand out. And whereas in some cases there is something about them that does stand out from the others. So for me, it's been figuring out what are those things that are, like you say, like a tipping point for extra mowing. What is the thing that's a tipping point for, does this one get more disease? Is that actually going to impact what I do on my weekend when I'm mowing? Is it going to impact what product I have to buy? Do I now have to go buy a fungicide, whereas maybe I could have got away with not doing that before? Those types of thoughts. So that's what I'm learning, and I'm really enjoying that side of it. But I think it's funny. I think as consumers, we're all after that turf variety that repairs quickly, but it grows slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, if you think of what we actually want, guys, that's not a thing. That is not a thing. You can't get one without the other, and by all means, they're getting closer. And I think that we're so lucky to have the likes of, Lawn Solutions Australia, of Turf Breed, of Green Space Co-op, or whoever is bringing these turf varieties in. We're so lucky that we've got innovators out there bringing these new varieties to the market. Yeah, they're actively trying to bring out the holy grail in terms of turf varieties. The Lawn Solutions, I think it was last year, they brought out Zoysia australis.
Yeah.
So because they know everyone quite likes the appearance of Zoysia. We like that it doesn't grow as quick, doesn't need as much water as buffalo, so we like that. But the one sort of downfall of Zoysia is it doesn't repair very quickly, or maybe it doesn't cope with traffic as well. And so, you know, they got Australis as being a bit more of an aggressive Zoysia variety, and it is. And it does grow a little bit quicker from what I've seen. But I just think it's awesome that we're sort of pushing these companies to find these really bizarre turf varieties that do all these different things that probably shouldn't go hand in hand. So, but I think at the end of the day, we need to sort of check ourselves and go, can you actually get something that grows quickly and repairs quickly but won't need mowing that much? I'm just not sure how realistic that is.
I am hearing you saying this, and well, I'm just what's gone through my mind is that imagine having this conversation with, you know, your great grandfather who was working on a coal mine or something like that, trying to make ends meet, or even, you know, back to the caveman days or something like that, and just having them listen in on this and go, wow, the world has really progressed when you get to a point where you are measuring minute differences between couch grasses because homeowners want to cut at a certain height. And then just the idea of even applying fertilizers and products and just like, oh, wow. At some point, you got to stand back and go, life's pretty damn good, isn't it? Like, you know, there's a lot of challenges to life still, but like, if you're just being fair and honest about it, like, we've got it pretty good that these are the type of conversations we can have, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I just think I think it's a really exciting time to be a lawnie or be in the turf industry or anything like that, because we have the turf companies doing all this great work and all this research and everything to try and get the best ones for the Australian conditions. And some of those, unfortunately, do have to come from somewhere other than Australia, because the top turf breeding scientists and the top turf breeders and stuff, most of them are over in the US. So we do bring in turf, and I just find the whole thing just so fascinating. And you know, I've seen it firsthand that the turf comes in little pots, and then all of a sudden a bigger pot, and then we'll make a plot out of it. We'll put it in a paddock, and I've really enjoyed working with those bigger companies and having the conversations with the likes of, you know, Simon from Lawn Solutions Australia, Nathan from My Home Turf Breed, and having the conversations about, like, do you have failures? And they say, yeah, for sure. Sometimes customs will kill the turf that they're trying to bring in, and that's it. If it gets a disease or something, it's not going to go any further than that. And I can only imagine how much sort of money has been invested in that, and time and energy. And then same thing, you can get a grass that's doing all the right things and, you know, ticking all those boxes, but then you go to get a harvester on it, and if it doesn't harvest nicely, why would the farmers grow it? So again, they could get it to that point where they're going to plant it, but if you can't harvest it, then it's not going to be viable over here. Yeah, I just find that all just so fascinating, and I just wish more people knew about everything that goes behind it, and sort of gives a bit more credit to those types of companies rather than, you know, I think sometimes we're a bit critical of, it's the new thing, and I've already seen it on social media a little bit of, here we go. You know, last time it was T31 bandwagon. Now we've got iron cutter bandwagon. And I just think that we should look at it positively of, you know, it was quite a few years ago, TifTuf came along. Yes, people should have jumped all over it, being like, how good is this? It uses less water. It does this. It does this. People jumped on to Tahoma 31. I want to try this. And now people are jumping on to iron cutter, and it's going to take a while for us to see which ones are best in what situations, but I just think they're all taking big steps forward. I think it should be positive.
People get excited about all sorts of stuff that, you know, like, it's like people lining up for the new iPhone. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the last, like, 15,000 iPhone updates have been, like, minuscule updates. Like, for the first couple that they did, it was like, oh, my goodness, this is revolutionary. And, oh, my goodness, look how good the camera is now. And then it got to a point where, like, it's like, how do you keep improving that? It's like you sort of can't. They're kind of the same shape. Like I watched MKBHD, which some of you guys might watch, but he's a tech YouTuber and he does a lot of reviews, and he was reviewing or at least talking about the new Apple headphones. And I just watched a minute of it because he just goes, well, all they've done is they've changed it to USB-C and there's some new colors. And it's like, oh, right. So that's the whole update. And so anyway, what I feel is that some people are very suspicious because that has been their experience with other businesses. They go, is this really that different? Or is this just another Apple product that's been,
is it hype? Is it this? Is it that? Yeah. I think I'm probably putting my health teacher cap back on, but I think it's like anything in the diffusion of innovations model. I don't know if you're aware of that, but you have us as people, we all have our own sort of, I guess, quirks and things that we like and our own characteristics. But ultimately, the uptake of any innovation, whether it's a new phone, whether it's the COVID app or whatever, or turf, is you have your early adopters. So they're the people who are, they're on release day going, oh, I want the new iPhone, got to have that. And you'll always have those personality types uptake straight away. Then it'll be like a bit of a bell curve, and you'll have the majority of people over time and then you'll have your laggards sort of who are like, oh, I'm going to wait to see that I don't die first, and whatever the scenario might be, but I'm going to wait and see what this person does first. And I think that's the uptake of anything. And I think it's cool to be one of the first people to try out a turf grass. I do find it mind-blowing. There's some people's names and things come up on Facebook, because I'm across a couple of Facebook groups on lawn care, and there's some people that just seem to rip up their turf every 2 years and put down, hey, have you seen it? And they'll put
a couple of times,
and I think it's cool. And then at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much would that be costing them to do this each time, to scrape it? But they love it, and it's, it's not really doing anybody any harm. It's probably a hobby to have. But I just think it's really good to see these companies doing that. And I think we're soon going to see fertilizers and fertilizer companies really try to push the limits in terms of sustainable products and sustainable feeding and things like that too, because we're already trying to find turf grasses that have low input requirements and low this and low that, low carbon footprint and whatever else. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what then happens to the fertilizer market, and is that going to sort of follow suit or not? I just think it's a super exciting time. I think even chemicals, where we've got products like Acelyprin now, where I don't think there's any PPE on the label. Like, you can literally grab out the granular and throw it out if you wanted to. Always double check the label though.
I'm pretty sure you can eat it, I think. No, don't do that.
I did not say that. You said
no, you can imagine someone though taking it to the extreme. It's like, there's no PPE on the label. I'm pretty sure you can put it in your bath and swim in it if you wanted to.
Oh my gosh.
No, don't do that.
Don't try this at home. But no, I just think that it's a really good thing. At the same time, it's probably a little bit frustrating, because I think that's why the residential market, while we've got a couple of products on the market, like there's some behind me right now there that are in small pack, I think the reason we're not seeing more products available is because they're trying to make everything so safe for the average homeowner, so that no one is doing anything stupid or nothing bad does happen. I was speaking recently, I won't say with what company, but I was speaking recently with a representative from one of the chemical companies, one of the major ones, and they were sort of alluding to the fact that it's going to be harder and harder for them to get registrations of some of these products in small pack if PPE is actually required. And partly because they may not trust the average homeowner to read the label and actually put the PPE on. And I think it's disappointing in one sense, but then in another, I can totally understand it because it does happen all the time. Questions online about, hey, what's the rate of this? It's like,
yes,
read the label. Don't ask people on Facebook, because some people joke on Facebook and someone will go and do it.
I've never done that. No, I'm always serious.
But you know what I mean? Some people just totally misread, like can't get tone from text and go, oh, okay, that's what I'll do.
Sorry.
On one of the groups there was I don't know which group, and I don't even know if it's legit or not, but I remember reading it and sort of having a giggle. Is someone had nutgrass or something, and someone said, oh yeah, go down to Bunnings and buy a sledgehammer and get it with a sledgehammer. And it was like almost like Chinese whispers type thing of they were meaning sledgehammer, the product.
Yes.
To be that Bunnings stock, and somewhere along the way this person thought that they were doing the right thing, giving this advice of go get a sledgehammer. And this,
do you think it was an autocorrect at some point, or like
I don't
someone's
know.
written sledgehammer, they've read sledgehammer, and then this person's gone, well, I read it.
Yeah,
it was coming from
I don't even know if it's
some turf expert, some genuine turf experts had an honest autocorrect.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everyone believes that you get a sledgehammer. Although I reckon if you hit it hard enough, long enough, it would die. So would everything else in that vicinity. But, you know, it's kind of not false advertising.
Yeah. No, nothing kills nutgrass. He did come back stronger from that. It's shocking. But, I just think we've got the world at our fingertips with our phones. And I just find it really bizarre that and there's no such thing as a silly question, but when you're dealing with chemicals and you haven't even read the label, that just shows, it's like you should have to read the label on your way out of a shop or something to prove that you've read it, you know what you're going to do. And we all make mistakes. I've done things wrong and been like, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And you get it, and you read the label and you're going to do the right thing. But yeah, it does worry me a little bit that that people just have access to these products, and some of them are a little bit nasty. Like if you've got to wear full-on overalls and a washable hat and elbow-length PVC gloves, then you should probably know what you're doing. You should probably have a pretty good idea of exactly how much of this stuff you're going to pour out onto your yard. So that, I guess that's my only concern about that space.
Recently, I made a small business course called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery Course. It's for people who are starting out in the industry or who have been in maybe for a year or two, and they're really good at the gardening side, but they struggle on the business side. There's 47 lessons that cover everything from how to get great clients to how to work out your pricing, how to work out a system that's efficient, and ultimately set up a business that is going to be successful. Essentially what I did is I thought about myself as a 19-year-old. And I thought, looking back when I started my business, what would I tell my 19-year-old self to help him avoid all the stupid mistakes that I ended up making and have success in a much quicker time frame? If you know somebody who wants to start a business, it's made for them. If you're struggling in your business, you love the industry, and you want a successful business, this is made for you. We recently added the option as well to break down the payment over 4 months, so it makes it a little bit more affordable for those who are just starting out. The course is called the Aussie Green Biz Mastery Course. For more information, follow the link. If you're wanting to upgrade your lawn care this season, jump on today's sponsor, The Lawn Shed. Lawn Shed stock a full range of everything you need for great lawn care, from fertilizers to wetting agents to soil amendments to pre-emergent, post-emergent, plant growth regulators, everything that you could need. Their products are actually the products used by stadiums across the country. I know, I've seen them in the sheds there when I've done tours. My opinion has always been that if you're going to charge for a service, use the best quality stuff you can get. So jump on the Lawn Shed today, sign up for a trade account, and tell them that you heard about their services through the podcast. Thank you so much for supporting Lawn Shed.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like part of it is, well, there's a few things. One of them is the education side, and then the effort. Like if you're typing on Facebook, I never understand why anyone types any sort of question on Facebook that could be answered by a Google search, because it's the same amount of effort, but you have to wait longer, and then you're even not sure if it's the right answer. Like, why don't just anyway? So the whole idea of like, how much do I put into this? Well, it's in. Like, just Google it, right? Like, and then the label will come up, and you can read that anyway. And it is good that a lot of these comments now are just people just ripping into them, going like, read the label, like it's on the back of the bottle that you have, you know. But I also feel like part of it is there's two other things. One, the label is actually quite complicated, and it should be. But I can imagine, like, for a homeowner, if they just had, say, homeowner products, say, well, you've got, looks like your bow and arrow behind you there. So you take bow and arrow, and just on the product, there's photos or not photos, drawings of, you know, eye protection, you know, overalls, gloves, whatever. I don't know if that's exactly what's required of bow and arrow, but, you know, then it's like, oh, I buy the product and I can just flip it around in the store and go, I can see exactly what I need. And the most basic level is, okay, this one on the right here, it just needs gloves. And this one on the left here needs gloves and overalls and glasses and a washable hat. It's like, I'm going to get the one that just needs gloves, you know, and it's not fancy or anything like that. And then what they should do is
page document.
Exactly. But, you know, one of the things I found really interesting is if you go down the Bunnings aisles, a lot of the time they'll have product hanging on the, like, the upright post support of the brackets of the shelving, I should say. They've got little products that relate in the area that they're in, but they're not sold in the area. So like pipe cutters, right, might be sold in the tool section of Bunnings, but they're also hanging next to the pipes, you know, or thread tape or something like that. You know, WD-40 is hanging or in the aisle with some of the tools. The idea I'm getting at is, why don't they have that PPE right next to the chemical stuff anyway? Because then it'll be like, oh, I'm walking down, it's like, oh, there's respirators and there's overalls here as well. Sweet. I'm just gonna grab it because I'm here. You know, otherwise you forget. And it really is that homeowner market that is doing that kind of stuff. It's not it is the professionals too, let's be honest. It's the contractors. There's people listening to this podcast right now. You know who you are. just throw a bit of judgment down there. No, but what I'm getting at is it's mostly homeowners who are uneducated, they don't know, and they buy it and they go, well, this is in the same aisle as often the fertilizer that doesn't need PPE or the sea salt or whatever. And then they have no idea. It's all the complications. Reading the label is almost like reading Latin, and then you just go, I can't be stuffed. And so maybe there's a difficulty. There's an element of difficulty, and then, you know, to give the Facebook poster some benefit of the doubt, they then just go, oh, this is too complicated for me. I'm just going to put it up, and then, you know, at the end of the day, it's. Yeah, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but you could make it easier. So
I agree with like little infographics and things, and it's a really, really tough topic to get into as well, because like you mentioned the contractors before, and I'm also so acutely aware that there's contractors that have their chemical license. You know, they have to pay for that. They get put through the course. They've got to take logs that they know exactly what products they're carrying on board with them to go to the next job. They've got to give notice to the neighbouring properties if they're going to spray a particular thing. Like, they can lose their job if they don't follow one of their requirements. And then here's, you know, old mate down at Bunnings picking up the same product and basically pouring it out on their skin and things. Like, I can see how contractors
applying it in his thongs.
I can see how professionals can get really upset by that I guess access that homeowners have to the products. But I think for the most part, everybody's quite responsible, especially anybody in the influencer scene. I think that it could be a bit better for sure. And as I said, we all sort of make mistakes, but I think that we should learn from it. But I do think that any sort of influencer should really take it on board and try to do their absolute best to set a good example. Because the reality is if someone like Nick or someone like Ben, who have a far greater audience than anybody else, if they're wearing the full PPE, people watching it will take it more seriously. And they'll be like, oh, okay, that's what I wear when I spray this. You know, people see, people do. And I think that I know I've seen videos of both of those guys actually of wearing the full kit and get up. And I remember watching it thinking, good on them. Like, good on them for actually getting out there and doing it. Yes, it's the right thing to do, but they quite easily could have, I don't know, left off gloves or left off this or that. But they're aware of the audience and the people watching them, and that some people are just getting into the lawn care side of things and are maybe just buying products like Spartan or something for the first time. And I think it's, I don't know, I sort of want to applaud that. And also I think everybody should be trying really hard to model that and be good models. And if everybody makes mistakes, but yeah, learning from it's probably the most important thing, and making sure it doesn't happen twice would probably...
Well, Ben often overwears his PPE, and by that I mean like he's wearing more than is required on the label, and it's just that I think it's often smart anyway, because the question about that people have on chemicals, they often go, is this chemical dangerous or not? The truth is that there's a kind of irrelevancy to that question if PPE works. Right now, obviously, there's a point in which you don't want to muck around with something super dangerous. But if you're talking about pretty basic chemicals, and there's a small element of risk, if PPE works and the PPE is doing what it's designed to do, then the safety question, it doesn't really matter how safe or unsafe the chemical is. It matters how much PPE you are or are not wearing. And I don't want that to come across as a flippancy towards chemicals, but it is kind of the answer to that age-old question of like, oh, am I safe to spray this? Well, the next question, the most obvious one, would be, well, does the PPE work? And people will then spend all this time arguing online about whether they should be applying or not applying chemicals and all that sort of stuff. And it's kind of... It is a serious conversation. I'm interested in having that conversation. I'm not saying we should stop, but it's also kind of at a point where you go, well, yeah, if PPE works, then if someone's really against the idea of spraying chemicals, it doesn't. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you're wearing, like you said, if someone's over wearing PPE, they're being overly cautious, and it's like, well, the chemical really shouldn't be coming into contact with them at all, due to the amount of PPE that they're wearing. I just think I'm very interested to see, like, if you had like a little time machine, is where are we going to be in 10 years time with some of these chemicals? Are they all still going to be available? Are they going to be, is their registration going to change? Like, that's the part that I'm interested about, because I have even stories from my dad, who grew up on a farm, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying it, but they used to have, DDT.
Even if he does, stuff him. We're telling him anyway.
He can't get rid of me. Whatever. You need me. You're aging. You need me more than I need you right now. No, he wouldn't know how to watch this anyway. He's one of those late adopters of technology. So
he's trying to find this on the radio station.
But like, he's told stories about how they used to spray their crops and things, and his family weren't super wealthy, and so they didn't have like the proper spray applicators. They would use their thumbs to spray to get like a flat fence. Oh, it's horrible listening to it. Like things like DDT, and that was... He's like, well, it's either that or don't spray it. And we didn't know or understand the risk back then. Yep. And he goes, I think back now and go, what were we doing? Obviously. And I just wonder, are we going to have any of those types of moments in, say, 10 years or so, and think back and go, oh, we shouldn't be messing around with that chemical, or we shouldn't have done this, or we shouldn't have done that. And I think it's even when you clear out your shed sometimes, and like when my parents moved out of their place recently and downsized, is I got all the stuff from their shed, and some of the chemicals And some of the old lawn grub sprays and things like that, you're just like, oh gosh, I don't think you can even buy that anymore. I don't think it's legal to sell that. I'm very interested to see where we go with the whole chemical thing now that the chemical companies are very, very aware that there is a residential market there and they do need to cater for it and they do need to make product available. But at the same time, they're trying to balance the safety and we've got to make it as safe as possible. So, yeah.
Well, on a political note, like, I'm always against more government intervention, all this sort of stuff, because what ends up happening is at some point you need to allow somebody to be a bit of an idiot, otherwise everybody, it's like if you treated all the kids in the class exactly the same way as you treated the naughtiest kid, it's like, it creates this resentment against the teacher, if that makes sense. I hope that's my idea's coming across.
That's a good analogy. I like that one.
Well, it's like, there's some people who are really well behaved and they're going to be smart about it and they're actually going to apply PPE. And if someone's like, well, we're not going to sell that product anymore because some idiot was using it stupidly, the guy who's done the right thing the whole time, or the girl they're like, what the heck? I did the right thing the whole time. And then what ends up happening is it's a bit like what happened to, well, I don't know how we've ever gotten down to this path before in the podcast, but when they made alcohol illegal in America in the 1920s, something like that, I can't remember what it was called, abolition, I think it was. But anyway, people just started making their own alcohol that was like really bad. And so it was like, I don't know where that came from in terms of the whose idea it was politically, but it actually made it worse. So I can imagine a world where it's like, oh, we're not going to sell these residentially to people. And so what happens is somebody gets a license, buys 20 kilos, decants it into some bottles with no safety markers on it, and then sells it on Facebook Marketplace, and makes a profit. It's like, is that better? Because people are going to try to find the chemicals anyway, and the idea of the government stepping in and going, oh, we're not going to allow people to sell. I mean, for really dangerous stuff, 100%, right? But I'm talking about, products that are Schedule 5 or, need a small amount of PPE. And people worry, and I do worry a little bit about somebody who comes in and doesn't use that level of common sense and then bans chemicals that are actually not that bad. And then it gets worse because everyone's like, no, we're going to make our own, sell on the black market. And, it's kind of become like lawn drug dealers in a sense.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's probably another health-related topic of, it's that you don't want anyone to come in with that zero tolerance approach of just, I'm going to treat the masses this way because of the actions of one individual. It's as long as we're doing the right thing and we're minimizing harm, you can't eliminate harm.
Exactly.
We're never going to get there, but if we can try and minimize the harm, and that's why I think it's so important that the YouTube channels and the Instagrammers and whatever out there, that there is this aspect of education to their videos, and I think more and more of them are going down that route, and I think that's great, especially if the message is right, obviously. But if you can just keep pushing the messages out there, and they're seeing, the likes of Ben in full PPE, they go to Instagram, and that same message, it's such a consistent message is there. Then on Facebook, and we are seeing it. You see, have you read the label? Make sure you read the label, and people are doing that now instead of answering and saying, it's 50 mil per 100 square meters. Everyone's giving the link to the labels. Like, it doesn't matter if your label comes off. Go online. They're all registered labels. They're all there. I think it's really important, that people are answering in that way and in that sense, and I think more and more people are using that wording of follow label instructions. So
moving on from all these conversations about the lawn and the product and everything, you were talking about well, I wonder where the future is going to be for the industry and the chemicals and stuff. But what's the future going to be for you? Because you used to run Real Solutions, and that's kind of how you got into the industry. Actually, you started making stuff in your backyard and selling it online, and then it grew and grew and grew. And it sounds a bit more like the drug dealing we were talking about before. Actually,
I was gonna say, making stuff in your backyard. I'm like the person.
It wasn't a meth lab. No, it was a lawn aerator lab.
That's funny.
That's so your dad's definitely not watching this one. Even if he did find it, he's just discovered his daughters are potentially, But no, so you've sold or you've shut that down, potentially selling it. I don't know if I'm talking out of school there, but anyways, moving on. But you have you've now focusing on the YouTube channel and the product. Lawn Care Australia really is what you're really focusing on. So what's your goals? What's your future? What are you trying to achieve now in the industry?
I think I'm in just a good place at the moment in terms of I love what I do now. So my goals are to just continue doing what I'm doing now. I want to continue being part of turf research, and there's always going to be a need for that. There's always going to be a requirement for that because we're always trying to be better. There's always going to be turf varieties coming out that are on the market. I think we're a good 10 years behind America. So you could probably see what's out there now in America. We'll probably be looking at it in about 5 or so years' time. So I want to continue that, and I just want to continue running the YouTube channel. I want to be a bit more consistent this spring, summer, and I think that's probably the main driver behind finally letting Real Solutions go, because I think I was really holding on to it for quite some time because it did mean so much to me, and it still does. I wouldn't be here now on a podcast if I didn't start that. I wouldn't have gone down the rabbit hole with the lawns if I didn't make my cylinder mower into what I made it into. I just want to focus on the things that are interesting to me, and I want to keep learning, and I think the best way to keep learning is to be part of the industry. And I've been so lucky so far, to be honest, in terms of who's reached out and the people that I'm able to sort of connect with and speak to on a weekly basis, fortnightly basis. When you're part of research trials with the likes of Will Pearce and Dr. Brett Morris from Syngenta, like that's a pretty big deal for anybody in the industry. And I think I've learned so much in the last year in particular, and I still have a very long way to go. And though I'm sort of inexperienced when it comes to, some things in the industry, the only way to get experience is to do it. And so that's what I'm just going to keep doing until I've got the experience.
Get your hands on.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see it as, I don't have experience, I'll stay back then. It's, okay, if I don't have experience, how do I go about getting that?
Yeah.
I think that's what the future holds. I want to do a bit more on YouTube videos. If I can film a bit more of the trial sites. Like I said, they're not my trial sites. I sort of work on them independently. So I'm interested to see some of the findings that come out of the reports. And obviously, as I'm able to, I'll hopefully be able to share that with people and hopefully be able to go in and film things. But just in the last 12 months, I've been to Suncorp Stadium, I've been to the MCG. I've interacted with you on a podcast. I
don't think that's on the same level. I'll be honest.
I reckon that's probably the top, actually. And then
you're just saying because I'm here, but as soon as Matt's here from Suncorp, you're like, oh no, actually, yours the best. You're just conniving. Oh, mate.
No, but I'm just having some really awesome experiences, but probably at the end of the day, there's nothing more important to me than my family. And I think a lot of people are like that. And as much as I loved my teaching role, I've got so much more freedom now to be a bit more present with my own family and with my kids. So if you know, playing with grass during the day and stuff is what frees me up to hang out with my kids a bit more and be able to actually go to my daughter's athletics day and see them dressed up at book week. Those are things I never would have been able to go to, or I probably would have, but we're teachers are martyrs and we're all like, well, that's going to create extra work. I won't go for that because I'm going to have to write covers and this and that. So yeah, those, as you know, being a small business owner, you work around the clock and you work very, very hard for what you get. But at the same time, it's sort of being your own boss that's really important, especially when your kids are young. And I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So, yeah.
Very important.
Life's pretty dandy at the moment. I'm really enjoying it. And so hopefully it just continues that way.
So tell me about the tools that you're using at the moment, because you've got some pretty interesting mowers. I think you're using some battery stuff as well, if that's right. Yeah,
so I'm looking at some of them now. I'm basically a hoarder. I reckon being a lawn care person gives you the right to be a hoarder. I've got
well, you better hope so, because if it doesn't give you the right, then you're just a hoarder. You don't have any excuse.
No, I use the 60 volt Greenworks range for they've got like a multi-tool. I use that. The blower's awesome. I use that. I don't use the self-propelled mower as much as I thought that I might. I do it for like cleanup passes, but...
Is that a 60 volt one?
Yeah, the 60 volt. I think it's like 21 inch. I just use it, to pick up the leaf matter and stuff. My only sort of knock on a lot of the battery ranges in terms of mowers, and I think it's a standard thing, is that the blades are sort of recessed up in the deck. So their low cut height, they're never going to do a lawn reno or anything, they'll put it that way. Not in my experience of the brands that I've tried. So I don't use the mower as much. I use an Alro cylinder mower out the front. I love that.
Yeah.
It's awesome. You're Western Australian, hey?
Yep, good old WA products.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to get a cylinder mower, it's got to come from Europe or Western Australia. Like that's basically your choices.
I'd probably agree with that. I haven't used a Mowmaster yet. I've seen them in person and they're built like tanks. I would say the Alro is probably like the younger brother. And
the Alros are built like tanks compared to, I mean, yeah. Now I said Europe and the Western Australia. Also, like Protea is good, and like a lot of the golf course stuff from say, John Deere or Toro. I thought about it more, but yeah, definitely nothing made over in your side of the country. Everywhere else in the world probably fine.
Yeah. Do you want a shovel for that, or?
It's got plenty over there tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
In the gardening warehouse, we've got enough. I was going to say you can just fly over here one day, and you can just mow some of our lawns with some of our Mowmasters if you want.
I would love to. I'd love to. But yeah, it's one thing that I haven't tried a Mowmaster. I've tried a Protea, owned a couple of Scotties. I'm just about to start filming a putting green construction. I'm going to call it the poor man's putting green. Because I just don't.
You're not doing what Ben did.
I don't have the money to sort of throw away to just go, let's go full USGA profile and this and that. And I'd love to. And eventually down the track, I probably will. But yeah, we're about to have excavators come in the next year or two and rip everything up. So I'm just going to do it on 80/20. But I do have a Toro Flex 21. I walk behind that I bought at an auction. I'm bad at auctions, but I bought it on an online auction, probably
for $6,000. And
no.
I probably should have spent $500 on it.
I saved so much money. I made money. No. I bought it probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I've never tried to start it. I'm assuming it won't start. It cost me $750,
Okay, all right.
For a Flex
I was going to say
21.
you're gill mathing hard here. With I saved so much money, I'm making money. I bought something I haven't used for 7 years. It's like, well, come on. I don't think you haven't saved any money. You just spend money.
Now, you wait. If I can get it going, then so I'll film an episode on that. You probably won't see it though if I can't get it going. I'll be too upset.
I was going to say, to be fair, $700 5 years ago with inflation is about $250,000 now. So I think you've done really well.
Oh, it's funny because it's true. Hey. Yeah.
So, anyways, you're going to try and cut the putting green with the Toro Flex 21 cylinder mower. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll probably round out my cylinder mower collection. And then I got a Predator Scarifier, and they're good. I'm about to start using the grooming reel shortly on that, and that'll be interesting. But in terms of equipment, I think that's pretty much me. That's what I've got.
Well, what I was going to say on the Greenworks thing, I did a tour of Roy Grissie and Sons, and they're now selling, they will be selling rebranded, essentially what is rebranded Greenworks tools under Bush Ranger.
Oh, okay.
And because they have the ability to make spare parts, they have made a blade carrier for the Greenworks Bush Ranger. Still uses the same platform as well, the Steel RMA mowers. They're the same chassis. And so they've made a blade carrier for that where you can have 4 swingback blades and it will cut lower. And they've literally made it to solve that problem. So I believe, because I have 2 of the Greenworks 82 volt mowers here. One of them was destroyed in a truck crash, and I got sent another one. Yeah. I made a joke about it being like, it's, it failed the test. It's pathetic mower, which is not. It's just being joking that, the Mowmaster actually was totaled as well in the end. Like
that's when you know it was a bad accident.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I have somewhere here.
You should see the car. You should see the other car.
Yeah, I have the tow ball somewhere. It's in the truck, actually. But I literally have a severed, the tow ball where the weld is for a 3.5 ton rated truck tow ball is snapped off. The welds are completely snapped. Yeah, so a small truck went into the back of our trailer that hard. Trailer was totaled. Truck took 6 months to fix. It was 6 months to 6 days.
Obviously.
No one was in the truck. Yeah, except for the guy driving the other one. But I think he was on his phone or something, and he just didn't, it was 100 meters, 120 meters of straight road. And we were, parked on the side of the road. Nothing illegal about how we were parked or anything like that. And this guy's just not turned. Just a stationary train, just gone straight into the back of it, So, anyway, I wish they'd towed my truck on a slightly different note, because 6 months to get it back. The other thing that I could have done is, because I thought it was only going to be a few months, and I have these old utes, I could have gotten a replacement truck, and I was like, I don't need it. Yeah. I'm about to go on this tour and stuff. But then in hindsight, I could have just got myself a hybrid Camry or something like that, and done my entire Australian trip in a super cheap, fuel efficient car from someone else, and they can handle all the wear and tear of the vehicle. So, if I'd known. But what I was getting at is the Greenworks, the battery stuff. The problem with the battery stuff I've found, I guess the strength of it is the smaller you go in tools, the better battery seems to be, and then the bigger you go, you start having problems with either. It's a what do you call it? You got 3 options and you can only pick 2. You have great runtime, great power, price is really high, right? Yeah. Or you have the price being, average and the runtime's pretty good, then the power goes down. Or the price is good and the power's pretty good, but the runtime's, bad. And so if you have the money to buy some of these new battery ones that are coming out, like the new commercial Greenworks one, which I think is like $3,000. Don't quote me on that. The new Ego one, which is really expensive. I went to a Makita event the other week, and they have some stuff that they're getting at with these really big batteries on it, and they're really commercial stuff. And at the end of the day, just putting it out there. If you're a commercial operator, you're making money from it, and $800 or $500 or whatever it is extra really makes no difference because you're paying money for fuel or whatever. But for the homeowner, it is very hard to justify any more money, and that's kind of your market. And you could go and get a mass port that will cut to 7 millimeters, very simple walk behind mower for somewhere in the hundreds. And that's where I think that's where the line is, in my experience, is maintenance stuff, but really overgrown stuff, really thick cut stuff where you got to cut low or anything like that. The battery mowers, a lot of them can now do it, but the price point's so high that unless you're making a return on investment, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And I had probably a year ago, I had one half of the front yard that was still pretty much like weeds. I hadn't started looking after it. And as you said, I could use the Greenworks on the top half because that was just maintenance mowing. But then you start to use it on the bottom, and it wasn't super overgrown. Like the Honda would have been fine with it. But it's also just, it sort of gets caught up as it's rotating and it just grabs onto it and the mower shuts off. So that would happen a fair bit as well. And I've used other people's battery mowers and the same thing sort of happens. So I also think that if you're going battery, it's not really worth looking at anything under like your 60 volt range. And like you said, is if you're looking at like the Greenworks stuff for myself, I use the 60 volt. I'd love to use the 82 volt, but as a homeowner, I'm not going out mowing people's yards and things like that. It is quite a stretch, and you see that the products are better, and I could probably get more out of an 82 volt Greenworks mower or snipper or whatever. But yeah, in terms of where I put my money, I'd probably prefer to just keep using what I'm using and then save up and buy a Mowmaster, or you know what I mean? Like I'd rather put my money
save up for a decade to get a Mowmaster. That's all my life savings when I'm 65.
But that's another interesting thing. Like I've noticed with cylinder mowers and just any of these types of scenes at the moment is we are, like it or not, we are sort of in a bit of a cost of living crisis. And even I'd sort of not laugh about it, but we call it that jokingly because it's what you're bombarded with. But at the same time, it's like lawns are a bit of a luxury item.
100% luxury item, yeah.
Yeah, and people will realize quickly that when you are going to look after your lawn and you do want your lawn to look good, it doesn't come very cheap either. When you do,
it depends what standards you're wanting to get it to, and it does. You start going down that rabbit hole, exactly.
It's a rabbit hole, and then people start watching YouTube and start doing this, and they go, "Oh, how do you get those stripes?" And well, now you've got to buy a cylinder mower. Oh, okay, I'm going to buy a cylinder mower. Where do they start at? And I was just lucky that when I started, I could get a Scott bonnet for $100.
I'm the same.
You can't do that now, but it's interesting. I don't think the demand is there as much as it was in recent times. I think that people are still super fanatical about Scott bonnets, about cylinder mowers and everything like that, but you can even see it on Marketplace. The prices are starting to come down.
I've noticed that too.
Yeah, and they're staying up there longer, whereas, a lot of the guys who are restoring them and known to be restoring them, they'd put one up and they'd have like a line of people, sold next, me next, and now they just stay up on Marketplace a lot longer than they ever used to, and the price is lower. So I imagine it's starting to get to a point, and I know I've spoken to some, it's starting to get to a point where it's like it's not really worth it for them to be restoring it when they can't even sell it for what they put into it. Yeah, and like I said, lawns are a luxury item. Well, if that is, then cylinder mowers are even more of a luxury item. So, yeah, especially restored Scott bonnets. I've never been on the restored Scott bonnet train. No, so I have a Scott bonnet. I somewhat restored it,
I got the Scott one for free because it had a seized engine, and we spent $400 at the time or three something on this sort of Briggs and Stratton engine, and some it needed a new clutch, and it's worked since. And look, honestly, they're great mowers, but they're only great mowers at a certain price point. And then once somebody puts, all this work into it and a new paint job and everything, and I'm not trying to dismiss someone's hobby or what someone else likes, because it's like fashion, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you are purely talking from a value for money standpoint, I've always believed that the Super Swifts, the Mass Sports, the Bush Rangers that you can get brand new with a certain warranty, treat them right, treat them well, they will last you. And I'm not affiliated with any one of those brands. But at the end of the day, I can understand someone spending $5,000 or whatever they used to spend crazy money on these restored Scott Bonners when for $2,000 you could get a brand new, Mass Sport or Bush Ranger. My pricing might be outdated now because I haven't looked for a while. But, I've never really been on that train. If you're going to spend that much money, you may as well go and get yourself the Mowmaster for $8,000 or whatever it is, and go all the way. And then, but look, people can spend whatever money they want to on whatever they want to do, but the value for money was never really there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've heard that argument a lot. I think there's definitely something to be said for. I've obviously had Real Solutions previously, and the aftermarket parts available, and there's many sellers out there now, and it's the pricing of everything now is so affordable. I remember when I first started dabbling in the Scott Bonner world, you had like GA spares, you could get like a chain tensioner, and that was about the extent of the clutch cork, and that was about the extent of the spare parts. But I would say for the right price, like you said, it's very much price dependent. I would probably still put money on a restored Scott Bonner, not because it's a Scott Bonner, partly because it's a Scott Bonner, but also if you're going to put a billet clutch, CNC machined, sealed bearings, if you're going to put all these parts on it that upgrade it, then I would argue that it would be better than a Super Swift. But
it depends. It depends on how good the chassis is to start with. Like if you have a great chassis and it's being cared for, and you don't have to replace the cylinder because it's got enough meat on it, and maybe just put the bottom blade, and there's a few things, and then you run it at that, and it's like it cost me $1,000, and then you're like, okay, now I want to put a paint job on it, and I'm doing that for my own fun. That's a different thing. I feel like when somebody makes a mower and then paints it all the fancy colours and then sells it to somebody else, and they've got the profit margin in it as well. I kind of compare that in the same light as, I see the argument from all the sides, but just the value for money for a homeowner who's cutting 100 square metres, it's really not that much work on the machine.
Get your warranty, exactly, and especially if it's probably the intro machine, then Super Swift or I think their Cox ones are out there, and it's like, see if you like a cylinder mower. You might not like it. You never know, and that's the awkward thing. Imagine trying a cylinder mower for the first time and you've just spent $4,000 on a restored Scott Bonner, only to find that you can't keep it or you don't like it. It's like,
or $2,000 on a whatever. It was like it's still money for something you're not using.
Exactly. But I don't know, it's something that I've noticed in recent times on the likes of Facebook Marketplace in particular. There's more and more cylinder mowers for sale, and I just wonder, I'd sort of love to know, are they upgrading or are they getting rid of it? Because cylinder mowers have been on the rise in the last few years in a huge way. There's been a resurgence, and I'm interested to see what happens with the trend now. With the cost of living crisis, is it now going to decline slightly, or are they upgrading? Are they going, I'm going to go a Mowmaster, I'm going to sell this? But I don't know. It's just something that I've noticed recently, and I've been chatting about it with another couple of lawnies who've noticed the same thing, and we're like, are people getting out of the cylinder mower scene, or I
wonder as well if it's that they bought multiple because they were really into it, and they go, I only need one. Why did I buy 6? Like, some people, like, I see their photos of that, and Jared Summer is one of those people from Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia Facebook group. So call out for you, Jared. 600,000 mowers or something stupid, and it's like, how many do you need to cut the grass? I don't know, 3, like a scalping mower, maybe a rotary pick up the leaves and 1 good cylinder. He is a contractor though, but it's a hobby that these people have, and I wonder if they've gone a little bit too far down that collecting the mower thing and gone, got a little bit carried away. I'll get rid of one of my Scotties.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And I know I've been at that stage. Like every now and then I'll say something to my husband. I'll be like, oh, do we really need that? And he's like, do we really need the 8th mower? I go,
got ya.
Yeah.
Do you really need this marriage certificate, husband?
Yeah, exactly. Who's keeping you on? So,
exactly. Well, you said for better or for worse, all right?
Yeah,
this is the worst. So you're staying, all right?
So, yeah, we let each other have our sort of hobbies. But, yeah, there's been times when I go, I'm going to start to move some of these mowers on. And now I'm my own worst enemy because already in my mind, I haven't told my husband this, he'll see this soon. But already in my mind for this putting green project, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to need the flex to cut the green. But then I'm going to need like the Rover Select. I can't sell that because I'm probably going to need that to cut the collars. And then I can't possibly sell the 6-blade Scotty because that's going to be perfect to cut the surrounds. And so then that's going to save me more time, spend more time with the kids because I'm not going to be changing cutting heights on the mower.
I can see. And then you'll actually probably need, like, it just save more time. Right, you'll need a ride-on cylinder mower, but you can't get rid of the other ones just in case it breaks. Do you know what I mean? And then you go, look, I'm spending so much time adjusting it. I need 2 ride-on cylinders, and do you know what? Let's get. I'm trying to get some of these businesses on that are doing retroactive for Makers Month, retroactive GPS guidance systems for like Toro Flex Techs and things like that. Yeah. So the Greens Masters. Yeah. They're pretty amazing. There's a few of them. I've contacted them and they're keen. So hopefully I can do some podcasts with them. But you're going to get the automatic thing to drive them all for you. And eventually you've got the same amount of equipment as the golf course. But you need it all. And it's really about the kids. You know what I mean?
Save the children.
Exactly.
It's so true though, and every now and then I'll be so brutal and be like, no, that's it, I'm clearing this out, getting rid of that, and then all of a sudden you talk yourself around, you go, but I need that, I'm going to use that soon.
You're not a hoarder. You're definitely not a hoarder. Like, it couldn't possibly be the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Your husband's going to see this, isn't he? He's going to be like, mate, that Luke guy's onto something there. No, look, you have to be, look, business is bad with that too, because especially if you're buying equipment, you're like, oh, well, if I buy this $6,000 machine, I only have to use it this much and it pays itself off. But then what happens is you need more space to store it all. And that's actually one of the things that's helped me save money is I ran out of space in my warehouse if I was parking cars inside, and I'm only allowed to have 2 car parks out the front. Then what happened is someone crashed into the back of my trailer and we totaled the trailer and haven't replaced it. And now I'm like, oh, I've got more space now. And it's like truck crash is costing me, I haven't spent anything yet, but I'm literally like, oh, I could get a tow behind 30 mower. Oh, it's close. It's close.
You said, I haven't spent anything yet.
Well, look, there's money. It's like what should I say? We got a project behind the scenes that we were working on for years, and it's expensive and it's taking me money. And I'm hoping at the start of 2025 it'll be out. So that's probably the thing that's going to stop me from spending money. But
okay,
you know, like so that tow behind Verdi, which I genuinely are considering buying, is like I'm just like, man, I could like they really tow behind flower mowers with different blades on them. But we do a private school and we've been outsourcing the work and people do contact us. I got a call by another school that was like, hey, can you do the renovation for us? And I'm like, yeah, and they're massive jobs, you know, like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 kind of thing. And you're like, maybe I should go and buy it. But then what will happen is you'll spend X amount of thousands of dollars on this machine. And then you go, but I want one with a catcher on it, like this one just drops it. And then you go, but then the ones with the engines mounted on it, they're not quite powerful. So I need a tractor. I'll get a tractor mounted one. And then next minute you're $250,000 because I need a bigger truck to carry my tractor. And it is a drug addiction. And you start going, so it's like, do I even start going down that path, or do I go, no, wisdom here? Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, this is where I'm at. And the other thing as well is, like, you could just hook up all these, I don't know. You got these connections. What have you got secondhand? Like, what can, and then you talk yourself into getting this sort of deal, but you're still spending crazy amount of money on the potential of potentially maybe sometime perhaps doing a couple of jobs. So we all go down that path at some stage.
You win some, you lose some. Some end up being good buys and some not so much. But like I said before, as long as you sort of learn from it. But yeah, so far I've not sold any of my mowers, but maybe.
I think you'll buy a bigger property first, a second shed.
Right.
Okay, we found where the genuine line is. The honest emotional responses revealed it. I on the subject of MoMasters, something we didn't say before is I've never really talked about this because it doesn't really come up, but they're actually quite difficult to use. Okay. You get used to it. Actually, I think I have said it a few times, but they're very heavy, right? And people are like, oh, that's, they're heavy because they're so well built, but it also means they're quite hard to turn. Yeah. And so what I've found is a few people who are in the eastern states, they have to buy brand new because they're using secondhand ones, and they go spend a lot of money on it. They go, this is quite hard to use. And some people, the thing is, if you persist with it, you can definitely get to the point as a contractor where you are cutting your lawns in exactly the same speed as you're cutting with a HRU 216, or a standard, whatever brand you're using, 21-inch walk-behind mower. But it does take work, and it's probably months. When people have come to work for us, it's probably a couple of months before they're fully comfortable with that kind of machine. And it's kind of a trade-off. It's like what we said before. It's like with the battery mowers. If you want the heavy duty machine, it's going to be heavy, and that means it's hard to turn. And if you want something that's light and easy to turn, like a Scott Bonner, well, is it going to handle the abuse that a contractor's going to put it through? No, not as much, to a certain degree. And what I found is, I try and say this before, there is a hype train for MoMaster. I love MoMaster. We use MoMaster, but the hype is in the wrong direction. People buy them and treat them like Rolls Royces. And I understand that because their price point is that, but they're not supposed to be that. You're supposed to buy them and treat them like a Toyota Hilux or an excavator, and it's kind of like it's the same thing as when people spend a hell of a lot of money on a four-wheel drive and then never take it, off the road. And they've got all the mods and everything. It's like, you miss the point of the machine. And that's with MoMasters. Like, the thing about the MoMasters is that they're incredibly reliable. They handle abuse. As a contractor, you have them on the back of your trailer, and your trailer bounces around everywhere, and they just don't break, and they just survive, right? Yeah. But the quality of cut, it lasts longer before you have to adjust it. They can handle hitting stuff, right? That's the idea about them. But at the end of the day, any cylinder mower that is sharpened and set correctly will cut really nice grass. And the cheaper ones will lose their set quicker, and they'll go blunt quicker, and the more expensive ones will last much longer. But if someone's cutting with a whatever mower and they've done a good job of it, and it's a cylinder mower, and it's cutting cleanly and it's doing a good job, you will get a more even cut from a heavier machine, and that's about it. And it'll last longer, and it'll handle going up and down ramps and all that sort of stuff. But what I'm getting at there is I think, in the same sense that there's a bit of a hype train with the Scott Bonners, like, the hype with the MoMasters is kind of off a little bit too sometimes, and people have spent crazy money on a machine that is really built for contractors, and that's really where it's thriving.
I've met a couple of customers in the last probably 6 months who are selling, and I'm like, what? How come you're selling your Mowmaster? And they say the same thing. It's just too hard to maneuver. I'm going back to a Scott Bonner. And probably the reality is the Scott Bonner was made for the homeowner to, you know, whip around your lawns and things like that. So if you want the best, then, you know, the word on the street is go Mowmaster. But it's also like, if you've got 50 square meters of lawn out the front, is it going to be the most suitable for your lawn type? Maybe not, especially if you've got like gardens to maneuver around and things like that.
Well, Nick's a great example because he's got the front section. Nick from Northern got Nick. He's got the front section, which is small, awkward, bumpy, and he uses the Massport. I think he still uses the Massport on it, which is a wider Massport, so not the easiest thing to cut with compared to, say, you know, a 17-inch Scotty. I think it's a 20-inch anyway. But then out the back where he's got the massive open spaces, he's using the Mowmaster, and the cut is amazing and lines are so straight. It doesn't float. It's awesome. You know, that MCG video that he did, awesome. Like, I love what he's done there. Well done, Nick. But that's a great example. And he's got 26. We've got essentially the same old, slight differences in the front roller and the blade and all that sort of stuff. I've got two 26s. One of it is slightly warped from a truck crash, which I have to fix. Get brand new chassis for it and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But the point I'm getting at is I have a 22-inch high cut, and that is my favourite mower. And it's the favourite mower that I've ever used, right? Walk behind that is 22-inch high cut split roller, and the reason why is it's just easier to maneuver than 26. Yeah. And we do a lot of small lawns now. Now it's slower than a 26, right? Yeah. But I kind of, you know, when you're talking about massive areas, yeah, there's a big difference. But when you're talking about small areas, I prefer a little bit more comfort in how you're using it, and maybe be a minute slower, you know, or maybe faster on some really small ones because you'd spend half an hour just turning it's like a big, you know, ship in the ocean. But look, it's horses for courses. And if somebody came to me and they were like, I have 30 square meters at my front, should I buy a Mowmaster? I think maybe like an 18-inch residential, but not the ones that we have, right? Yeah. If you're mowing it once a week, man, you could get away with anything. You know, you could it's the consistency of the mower and all sorts of stuff that's more important, and what you're buying and the money you're spending into it. Just like the Scott Bonners, you know, if someone's got a passion for it and they love it and they really want the machine, awesome. You know, if they're going, I just want to cut grass, it's like, man, just get something that cuts it. You know.
Yeah, you can get the same many ways to skin a cat. Is that the same?
Yeah, well, I've had some friends who use a different word instead of skin, but, you know, that's kind of how it goes. Hey, you know, we're at 1 hour and 38 minutes. Oh. I know, what the heck? Where did that go? Do you know what? I've enjoyed this. We should wrap this up. We'll go for it. We've talked about drugs. We've talked about backyard cooking. We've made Scott Bonner enthusiasts upset. We've made people who spray chemicals without care upset. We've just made everyone who absolutely loves TifTuf at the expense of everything else upset. Tahoma at the expense of everything else upset. Iron Cutter at the expense of everything else upset. Especially Winter Green. They're very upset.
Oh, sorry.
Is there anybody else before I finish? Anyone else? We made your dad upset. I made Jared. That's what I'm going to say. We've offended everybody in this podcast. Anybody left? Do you have any gripes against the Pope or anything?
No, I don't think so. I
offended people who make cylinder mowers in America. Oh, mate.
Oh, so good.
Well, we've got no one left. So on that note, thank you so much for coming on, Emma, again. Tell everyone it was a highlight of your career up there with Suncorp and MCG. Where can we find you now?
So best place will be www.lawncareaustralia.com or on the YouTube channel. Yeah, they're probably the best places.
Which is Lawn Care Australia.
Lawn Care Australia. I've kept it simple.
Yes, and again, since we last talked, I mentioned I think you're the only person female in any country in the world that I know of who is a female lawn YouTuber, and I still think you're the only one. So, well, not just Australian.
There's not many.
Like a YouTuber, there's some people on Instagram maybe, but is there a female American lawn YouTuber, European lawn YouTuber? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I don't watch that much YouTube. I'm a pick and stick type of person. I have the channels that I love and I will watch them. And sometimes I'm not open to new things when I should be.
Well, anyways, I genuinely don't think there is another one. I haven't found them yet anyway. So well done on that. So people, if you are wanting that girl power in the lawn area of your life, and why wouldn't you jump on that channel? And thank you for coming on, and everybody else, I'll see you in the next podcast.
All right, thanks.